Welcome to the MSL 411, a podcast designed to equip both aspiring and experienced MSLs with the resources they need to level up their career toolkit. The heart of this podcast is to take the same industry knowledge and advice that we share with our own candidates and make it available and accessible to anyone looking for answers. So if you have questions, you've come to the right place. We're here to give you the 411. And without further ado, let's dive right in. Hey, welcome back to the MSL 411 podcast. We have Lawrence Beck back with us today to talk a little bit about why a DIY candidate search might be hurting your team as they look for next MSL hire. So he's going to be talking to us a little bit about that. Before we jump into that, will you just give us a reminder, a little bit about you and your history with Symbio?
Yes. Yeah. So I've been with Symbio for 14 years now, and I had a background in sports management and decided that wasn't the life for me anymore. And so I joined recruiting and I loved it ever since. And it's been a fun ride.
You just celebrated 14 years.
I just did a couple weeks ago. That's right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
So then we'll just go ahead and jump into our topic. We're focusing more on the client side of things for this episode, but we hope that this will be applicable for MSLs too, who maybe want to understand a little bit more about how we advocate for you to our clients, which is a side that you don't always see as much detail into. So the first question I wanted to kind of talk about in this discussion is, you've been in the MSL recruiting world for over a decade now and working with candidates and clients during that time. What would you say in your experience and in these years are some of the biggest reasons that good candidates get away from good companies in that interview process?
I think the number one thing is time, because you got a lot of variables that go into a decision, right? It could be a therapeutic area, company size, territory size, compensation, whatever. There's things that are going to be advantages and disadvantages for all companies. Mm-hmm. But the one thing that you always kind of have some control over is the amount of time that it takes, right? You have to kind of assume that your favorite candidate might be someone else's favorite candidate, right? And so we run into this a lot where the time definitely can cost people the candidate that they want. And there's other reasons for that too. I mean, so for starters, again, if you've got a candidate that's your top choice, someone else, if they beat you to the punch and they make the offer first, I really think you're almost always fighting an uphill battle after that. I think that there's a school of thought out there that, we know that we're going to make this candidate an offer and someone else is going to make them an offer. Maybe we let them make the offer first so we could beat it. But that's risky. I really think that so often putting your best foot forward, being the first company to make someone an offer, that shows them how interested you are in them. And if you're not the first to make them the offer, again, I think you're fighting an uphill battle most of the time. And there are just generally, I've observed that I think the best, most high functioning MSL teams out there are the ones where the managers, they operate that way. They play no games. They say, no, you're our person. We're going to be making you an offer soon. They do it as quickly as they can. And that's how you do it, I think. If you set yourself up to always have to, settle, quote unquote, for your second or third place person, I don't know that you build the most effective teams that way, right? Yeah. I think time is absolutely the number one reason you could lose out on your candidates. And then, keep in mind, put yourself in the candidate's shoes, right? If a company just has a really slow process and they tell you, well, we'll get back with you next week. And then, maybe they don't hear back from you the following week. Maybe it even takes a little bit longer than that. They're going to start thinking, well, okay, I think maybe they moved on or they're not interested in me. And they kind of start to lose that connection that you had with them early on. So I think it could definitely cost you. Now, another thing is I think people have to remember that the longer an interview process takes, the more it could cost you in the end, because if you take a long time, you start to inch towards financial milestones for your candidates, right? So let's say hypothetically, you start an interview process at the beginning of summertime. In the summertime, I'm going to pick on summertime because that's when this can happen, right? vacations happen. Things can kind of drag out because
Yeah.
you can't get your candidates in front of all the people that you want to, right?
Yeah.
So you can start an interview process at the beginning of summer, and then by the end of summer, maybe you're finally making them an offer. Well, now we're in the second half of the year. We're in Q3, and that might be when people start thinking, well, I've worked towards most of my annual bonus. I think maybe I want to make sure that they offset that before I accept an offer. Vesting dates, stock vesting dates. Maybe your interview process takes so long that, well, now that's only 9 months away. So can we offset that too? So, I mean, taking too long can make this more costly for you too.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great point. We're people. We're
Yeah.
emotional creatures. We want to be courted, and
True.
people want that and expect that from the process. And the point you made about, um, you know, whether you're the first offer or not, it's that feel good of somebody made me an offer. This is exciting. This is great. They want me. And the second one doesn't quite have that. The first one did.
That's true. Yeah. Very true.
I think when we're talking to our clients and you have that client relationship, when some of these companies decide to DIY their candidate search and do their own recruiting, the candidates that they see are going to look a little bit different. And the process is going to look a little different for them than when Symbio's on board. So say a company that has two candidates, one through Symbio and one that maybe applied online or through LinkedIn, just applied on their own to the company. What are some of the differences that you think this client company is going to see? Can you talk a little bit about what that looks like and what the difference is going through a recruiter?
Yeah. So I think one of our main roles in this process is to eliminate surprises. We are, we kind of joke sometimes, again, like, hey, as recruiters, we're kind of the MSL of the interview process, right? And so as the liaison, if you will, we want there to be clear communication, transparency for both sides, right? And so for client companies, again, we're loading you with information, we're arming you with info, we're eliminating surprises. So you're getting a candidate profile, you're getting explanation for job changes or career changes or pivots or whatever. You're getting salary expectations. That's something that is a constant throughout the process. And then with the candidate, we're giving you all the info that you need up front, right? Here's the disease state you'll be working in. Here's the product, territory. If that company is not going to be able to pay you what you have set your salary expectations at, you'll know that up front so we don't spend time on it, right? And so, number one, I think we're there to eliminate surprises for both sides, right? Another thing is, for the companies, I think there's a lot of value in that, right? There's going to be candidates that they talk to who say, what would I be supporting again in this position? Or, maybe you're a big company that works in half a dozen therapeutic spaces. They might say, what therapeutic area is this again?
And sometimes it's not on the job description.
It's very true.
Big company.
That's absolutely true. And so, there's none of that, right? With the candidate through us. There's none of that surprise. Everyone should be on the same page right from the get-go. No surprises with the job, no surprise with the candidate. Everyone should understand what the interview process is. We're just we have the map laid out for us, right? So I think that's one of the key differences too.
Yeah. Territory too. A lot of times companies will just post this one state that they're posting the job in, and then you have to kind of get into the process to figure out this is what you're actually going to cover in the role. There's not a lot that's always presented on the front end.
That's very true. And I mean, I think candidates know that. I think the reality is if a candidate is actively looking, they're going to rapidly apply to a lot of things that might make sense for them and might not because it's it's not in there, right? And so we're as the recruiter in the middle here. I'm not going to call you the MSL for this job that makes no sense for you, and for you, the hiring authority, I'm not going to send you the candidates that don't make sense for your job, right? So. So I think that's the main difference.
Yeah.
Surprises. Yeah.
Yes.
You're maintaining that relationship on the candidate side for the client, their excitement level and what they love about the company. I think that helps the client out as well. Just having that relationship in place and kind of guiding them through the process. Say they are a company that takes a little bit of time in their interview process. It might be off-putting for somebody who doesn't know why they're taking time. Hey, this whole team is out at a conference this week. It's going to be a minute before we hear back from them. Sit tight. We'll let you know when we hear something. Where if they didn't have that knowledge from their recruiter being liaison, they might be off-putting and they could lose a candidate. So
very true. Very true.
Well, on the topic of surprises, I was talking to an MSL manager friend of mine. He was telling me about these great candidates he lined up. He was hiring for a couple of different positions, and he kind of felt like I could tell he kind of felt like it was a done deal with these candidates. But we know from doing this that that's not always the case. And, or maybe the hiring manager thinks that they've got a great pipeline of candidates. They're kind of at the beginning of the process. But then, sure enough, a week later, time goes on, they're posting the job again, or pipeline falls apart. And, I don't always want to be the one to burst the bubble, but that is kind of part of our job, is having those sort of more difficult conversations. In that scenario where someone thinks, hey, I've got it in the bag, you going in there and talking about those surprises is part of your role. And so why should somebody be kind of leery of that thinking of, oh, I've got this great pipeline, oh, I've got these great candidates?
Yeah, I know that. I get it. I get it. And I know it's easy to get excited about someone, but MSLs are people too, right? And people are unpredictable, and I think that you got to remember that as the recruiters, as the middleman of this, so often the MSL candidates that we submit are the people that we've known for years, right? And we're their trusted advisor. We're their therapist. They tell us what they like, what they don't like, and I think that it's kind of human nature for a candidate to start connecting with this company. There's kind of a love connection at first, but maybe they're kind of shy about telling them what their concerns are, or they don't want to be the bearer of bad news and tell them, I'm interviewing at this other place too. So, not the only people I'm dating, right? I think that sometimes they don't want to be the bad guy, and they don't want to say, this doesn't feel right for me because of X, Y, Z, whatever. And I kind of joke with candidates sometimes. I'm like, hey, we're the bad guy. Let us be the bad guy here. If you're not interested in them, if the money's not going to work, if you just aren't jiving with the people that you're talking to, hey, we'll deliver the news. Don't sweat it. So anyway, I think it would be easy to be a hiring manager and think, oh gosh, we just love this candidate, and not know that maybe they have certain things, brewing on the side, or things that are kind of bugging them that are ultimately going to lead to this not working out at the very end. And then, part of our role is to sniff that out early, not let it get to the very end.
Yeah.
Hey, if you just weren't clicking with the hiring manager, okay, let's stop now. And not let it get to the very end, roll out an offer, only to realize this is probably never going to work out at all, right? And so, that's all part of the job here.
Or even with the, thinking you have a pipeline of candidates, and then you kind of start getting the interview process, and this person doesn't have the soft skills, and this person, well, we thought they had the right therapeutic experience based on the resume, but then it's not really, or they're not really seeing the type of thought leader we were looking for. And then all of a sudden, things kind of, those 5 strong candidates you thought you had kind of start to...
Yeah. I mean, we've been there, right? We've had roles where, they took three candidates we submitted to a final, and then, no, sorry, we're not going with any of them. This person is too much this person's too much that, and this one, is that. It's just like, you just never know. You just never know what's going to come out at the very end once you finally get everyone in front of the candidate, right?
Yeah, that constant resetting back to square one, stage 0 with the candidate search is not costing them money. It's, a geography that's not being covered. It's KOLs that aren't being reached. So it really does affect the company as a whole. And kind of on that money thing, one thing that we see a lot is these companies that are doing their own searches, they're posting on LinkedIn or on their company website and thinking, oh, I'll get, all the candidates I need that way. And so they are getting hundreds of applicants.
Yep.
We hear that so often, right? We've had 200 applicants, 5 of them were qualified and made it through the HR stage.
Yep.
So what is the cost to a company for that? This is wasting the talent acquisitions person's time, because they are not just focusing on this role, but the 10 other positions that are open with the company. And they're being flooded by these unqualified applicants, or ones that don't make it past that phone screen stage. So what is the cost of that for a company?
Yeah, that's a good question, and you hit the nail on the head. I mean, for starters, sometimes the talent acquisition teams are stretched so thin. I mean, you might have one person that's responsible for, you know, screening or reviewing the applicants for MSLs, commercial, HEOR, whatever, ClinDev. They might be doing it all. And I mean, for starters, just think of how many resumes it is, right? That's ridiculous. Because you're exactly right. I mean, we're hearing this all the time. Well, we got 200 applicants, but yeah, exactly. We talked to like 4 of them, and I mean, just think how much time it takes just to get to that point, right? And so then you're interviewing them, and yeah, for starters, I think you're putting a lot of things on what could be very small teams' plate for internal talent acquisition. And then secondly, so let's say all of these things are piling up. It's making your jobs stay open too long. Well, so then what does that mean? So you're probably having an MSL cross cover. So now you're probably paying for more travel expenses to fly people into the vacant territory. Now you've got one MSL responsible for 2 or 3 MSLs worth of KWELs. Now you got KWELs that aren't getting engaged with. You got data that's not getting out there. I don't know how you quantify that, but I'm sure there's something to that, right? I mean, that could be very costly for a company to not be engaging with those KOLs for months while those jobs stay open. And like we said earlier, with the finances for candidates reaching milestones, raises, equity vesting, wanting their bonus to get offset, all that stuff. Like same thing. Again, those costs are adding up as the process drags out more.
There's the emotional drain on the team too. I mean,
oh yeah,
we call the candidate, oh, I'm so burnt out. I'm covering the whole west half of the country because so and so left, and this person was already on maternity leave, and now it's all on me, and it wears on your team too. Mm-hmm. While that position sits open, or while you're putting your team and maybe even your executive level C-suite, you're putting these people through these interviews that aren't going anywhere.
Yep. I've had those conversations with MSLs before that are in that situation. Like, we lost a team member. I've been cross covering, doing their territory along with mine. I'm burned out. I'm looking for something new. So then you run the risk of having another open position possibly because somebody has just had enough. It's been open for 6 months. They think it's not going to get filled. So you could be incurring more costs.
Yeah. And then what happens when then like your MSLs who are doing the interviewing with you, I'm so burned out here, maybe I should leave. And then that's like, oh, now you really got a problem on your hands.
Yeah. Candidates ask about that. How long has this position been open? Or if they know, I've seen this position around for a long time, they ask about it too, and they're curious.
That's such a great point. Feel like a house being on the market too long, right? Yeah, I mean, everyone's like, "Oh, what's wrong?" Yeah, exactly. Yeah, once that job stays out there too long, you like the chances that your next person doesn't want to take it either kind of goes up. Yeah,
it happens all the time. Well, to kind of close up our conversation, Lawrence, you have to give us a story. When you think back on the years that you've been doing this, give us a story that comes to mind where you kind of helped your clients steer clear of one of these scenarios because of your involvement in the process and that relationship you do have with your candidate.
Sure. So I think there's a couple of things. So for starters, I think we can help companies rather refine their interview process because again, candidates aren't always going to tell you what they think at the end, right? They might say, the MSLs are very polite people, right? They're very professional. And they might say, thank you for the offer, but I'm going to decline and move on. But then there's the times where we had clients who, there's something about the interview process that was really kind of rubbing people the wrong way. And we could say, hey, this is a factor. This is why we're having some trouble here. So I can think of a time that we were recruiting with a company that was building out a brand new team. This is years ago. But they're building out a brand new team. And hey, they wanted to do it fast, which normally we love, right? But you can be too fast sometimes. And so I recall this company who was, they were looking at resumes saying, these people look great. Bring them out to home office. We're going to do a panel interview. It'll last like an hour. We're making decisions after that. And I mean, hey, that's flattering to know that an hour with me was enough for an offer. But over and over again, these candidates were like, I can't accept this. I don't know anything about the company. I feel like I haven't gotten to know the people yet. And yes, this really rapid fire interview process it just wasn't enough for people. They could not sign the offer letter with such little face time with this company. And then I could think of another example on the flip side where we were working with a company that wanted the whole MSL team involved. They wanted every MSL to get to talk with candidates and kind of provide input, which is awesome, which is great, right?
Yeah.
I think every MSL can appreciate that.
Yeah.
But this team kind of gradually grew, and I got to a point where I was like, okay, this is too many people, and candidates were like, why am I still talking to people? And and so that's obviously just the complete opposite. Now we're dragging this out, it's taking too long, and candidates are starting to feel like a subject of an experiment or something, and so in both those cases, we had to kind of tell the companies like, hey, I think there's a middle, but we can kind of refine this a little bit.
Yeah. They appreciated the feedback.
Yeah.
They're not getting it.
Yeah.
They're not getting it.
I don't need a speed dating situation, but you don't want to drag on.
Well, and then we had another situation recently where the company was doing some expanding, kind of tweaking territories, and a lot of candidates said, well, it's really strange to break up these states. And, it would have never occurred to me, and it probably didn't occur to HR, that it was a very unique thing. They're like, well, when you're working in this therapeutic space, it really makes sense to work all these states at the same time because of there's certain connections and networking going on there. And once I heard that feedback 2 or 3 times, I thought, okay, I should really pass this along to them.
Yeah.
And so I did. I passed it along to the client, and to their credit, they had already started leaning in that direction anyway. I think that I wasn't the only person that they heard that feedback from, but yeah, they had started leaning in that direction anyway. So I can't say I can't play hero in that situation, but still, that's the companies should hear feedback like that. If their candidates, if the candidates that they want to be presented to them are have concerns, they should hear that, right?
Yeah, and I think anybody appreciates when you're genuine and honest with them, and that you're really advocating for them because you're telling them the truth. I think.
Yeah.
Candidate, client, that's what everybody wants. They want the real, honest feedback.
That's right.
So,
that's
good.
Right.
Well, we can let you leave without a couple of fun stories for us. And flying out for the first interview, that had to definitely have been pre-COVID. That had been a long time
of course,
ago.
Yeah, much different now. Much different.
You got the HR screen and the video calls and all of that well beforehand. But gosh, I remember those days.
Yeah. I miss those days.
Processes, but
I tell people all the time. Well, I mean, the dragging on part wasn't fun, but it was fun to talk to candidates and say, "How was your day at HQ?" And they would tell you all about it. Yeah. I miss those days.
They get back in the cab to head to the airport.
Exactly.
Call us. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Good times.
I know. I don't know if they miss it the same, and maybe
they probably don't.
Maybe
families are probably very grateful for.
Oh, that's right.
Flights and sleeping in the airport and, everything that can go wrong.
Yeah, but I know.
Good. Well, when this episode goes live, there's going to be, the description saying that this is great for people who are hiring that want to understand more about this and about some of the pitfalls of the DIY approach to finding your candidates. But I also think that and hope that this was helpful for you guys, for the candidates that are seeking a position that might be listening to this, because you got a little sneak peek into some of the behind the scenes of what we're doing and, how we're engaging with our clients on your behalf and why you're getting all these calls and questions from us asking about your timelines and your other interviews and all these things. There's a purpose because that's all part of what we do. So thanks for coming on.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. It was fun.
Yeah. So thanks so much for tuning into this episode today. If you want to send us a message, we'd love to hear from you. Our text link is in the show notes, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to share the link, let your friends know, and of course, connect with us on LinkedIn. And if you want more information on today's topic, please feel free to reach out. Be sure to check back soon as we continue to explore the topics that matter most to you in medical affairs.